The pain came first, sharp and localized behind my right eye. Then, the awareness, cool air, faint antiseptic smell, and the weight of two gazes I couldn't yet see. My eyelids felt like lead, but I forced them open anyway. Two figures sat motionless in chairs pulled close to my bedside. The larger one possessed features that simultaneously defied and invited comprehension, skin like polished obsidian that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, eyes too large and too knowing, set in a face that managed to be both utterly alien and disturbingly maternal. Beside her sat a smaller version, perhaps a third her size, with the same impossible eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. Neither moved. Neither spoke. I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every nerve in my body screamed in protest, and I fell back against pillows that smelled faintly of something like lavender but wasn't. The movement triggered a soft chime somewhere beyond my field of vision. Still they watched. Where? My voice came out as gravel. I swallowed and tried again. Where am I? The larger one, the queen, I somehow knew without being told, tilted her head in a gesture that might have been consideration or might have been something else entirely. When she finally spoke, her voice bypassed my ears entirely and resonated somewhere in the back of my skull. You are alive! That is what matters! The smaller one shifted slightly, and I caught the queen's hand moving with preternatural speed to rest on the child's shoulder. Not restraining. Warning. Memory came back in fragments. The transport ship. The cascade failure in the atmospheric processors. The emergency beacon I'd activated before the hull breach. The cold of space pressing in as my suit's integrity failed and… How long? I managed. 17 cycles, the queen said. You were dead for 4 of them. Dead. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. The child leaned forward, and I noticed for the first time that her hands were wrapped tightly around something, a data pad, its screen dark. The queen's grip on her shoulder tightened imperceptibly. My daughter wishes to speak with you, the queen said, and there was something in that mental voice that I couldn't identify. Hesitation? Fear? I have counseled patience. I looked at the child properly then. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 in human years, if such comparisons meant anything. But her eyes held something ancient and sharp, and her stillness wasn't the stillness of a child but of someone holding themselves back with tremendous effort. It's okay, I heard myself say, though I had no idea if it was. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. You do not understand what you invite. Maybe not. But I'm here because someone pulled me back from vacuum. I'm guessing that was you. It was necessary. The queen stood in one fluid motion, and I realized she was easily 7 feet tall, her robes moving around her like living shadow. You carried something we needed. I slid down my spine. The data core. Yes. That information was classified. Earth military. Eyes only protocols. I tried to sit up again despite the pain. You had no right, we had every right. The queen's voice cut through my skull like a blade. Your species' war threatened to spill into our territory. Your military's plans would have ignited 3 star systems. We intercepted your ship not to steal, but to prevent catastrophe. The child's hands tightened around the data pad until I heard it creak. So you saved me to what? Interrogate me? Use me as leverage? We saved you because my daughter insisted. The queen looked down at the child, and something passed between them, some unspoken communication in a language of minute gestures and shifts in posture. Against my better judgment. Against the counsel of my entire court. Against every protocol that governs first contact with species who have not yet achieved true sentience. We're sentient, I said, anger flaring despite my weakness. Are you? The queen's head tilted again. You poison your own world. You war over resources you have the technology to synthesize. You reach for the stars while half your population starves. What you call sentience, we call sophisticated mimicry. The child made a sound, sharp, cutting, unmistakably a rebuke. The queen went rigid. For a long moment, the only sound was the soft hum of medical equipment I couldn't see. Then she exhaled, a gesture that seemed entirely human and, therefore, completely jarring. My daughter, she said slowly, disagrees with my assessment. She believes you deserve a chance to prove me wrong. That is why you still breathe. I looked at the child again. She met my gaze without flinching, and I saw something there that made my breath catch, not innocence or naivety, but a kind of fierce, uncompromising hope. What do you want from me? I asked. The Queen moved toward the door, robes swirling. My daughter will explain. You have until the next cycle to convince her that her faith is not misplaced. If you fail... She paused, one hand on the doorframe. If you fail, you will be returned to your own kind, and we will proceed with our original assessment of humanity's threat level. And what happens then? She didn't turn around. Then, your species joins the long list of civilizations who destroyed themselves before they could join the greater community. We will simply ensure your self-destruction does not take others with you. The door sealed behind her with a sound like a sigh. The child and I stared at each other in the sudden silence. Slowly, carefully, she uncurled her fingers from around the data pad and set it on the edge of my bed. The screen flickered to life, showing an image I recognized immediately, my daughter, Grace, caught mid-laugh in our backyard garden. How? The word died in my throat. The child touched the screen with one elongated finger, and the image changed. Grace at her graduation. Grace in her medical scrubs. Grace in the photo she'd sent me 3 days before my deployment, holding up her acceptance letter to the xenobiology program. I found these in your suit's emergency storage, the child said, and her voice was like wind chimes, high and clear. I wanted to know who you were fighting for. My vision blurred. I blinked hard. Mother says humans only think in terms of now. That you cannot see beyond your own brief lives. She pulled the data pad back, cradling it against her chest. But these images tell a different story. You see forward. You plant gardens you will not harvest. You teach children who will outlive you. You reach for stars you will never touch. Your mother seems pretty convinced otherwise. Mother is afraid. The child's eyes met mine, and I saw depths there I couldn't fathom. She has watched 17 species destroy themselves. Some through war. Some through greed. Some through simple carelessness. She will not let yours threaten others with your collapse. So what do I do? The child stood, moving to the window. Beyond it, I could see stars I didn't recognize arranged in constellations that made my head ache to contemplate. Tell me, she said softly, what you were trying to protect. I thought of Grace. Of the garden she'd wanted to plant when she finished her residency. Of the message she'd sent about discovering a treatment protocol that might save thousands. Of her voice saying she was proud of me, even though she didn't understand why I'd volunteered for deep space assignment. Everything, I whispered. The child turned back to me, and in her alien features I saw something that transcended species, determination forged in the crucible of belief. Then help me prove that humanity deserves everything in return. Outside the window, a second sun began to rise, painting the strange sky in shades I had no names for. The data core, I realized, had contained more than just military secrets. It held Earth's complete genetic database, cultural archives, and disaster response protocols, everything we'd learned from centuries of mistakes. The Queen had called it evidence of our threat. Her daughter saw it as proof of our potential. I had one cycle, whatever that meant in this place, to bridge the gap between those two interpretations. To convince an alien child that humanity's capacity for hope outweighed our talent for destruction. The pain behind my eye intensified, and I realized it wasn't just physical trauma. Something had been done to me during those 4 cycles of death, some adjustment that let me perceive their communication, understand their tone. They prepared me for this conversation before I'd even woken. The child returned to her chair and pulled it closer. In her hands, the data pad showed a new image, Earth, blue and fragile, suspended in the void. Start at the beginning, she said. Tell me why this world matters. The medical equipment hummed. The alien suns rose higher. And I began to speak, knowing that everything, Grace's future, Earth's survival, humanity's place among the stars, depended on making one alien child believe that we were worth saving. The child listened without interruption as I spoke about Grace, about the garden, about the choice to leave everything behind for a supply run that should have been routine. But as I talked, I watched her eyes track to the data pad repeatedly, and I realized she wasn't just listening, she was cross-referencing every word against the information stolen from the core. You are consistent, she said finally. Most species lie when facing extinction. I'm too tired to lie. And it wouldn't matter anyway, would it? You have the data. She tilted her head in that same gesture her mother had used. Data shows patterns, not reasons. Her finger traced the edge of the pad. Your military files show 300 years of conflict. Treaties broken. Weapons deployed against your own kind. Yet your cultural archives show music, art, stories of redemption. She looked up. Which is true? Both. I shifted, trying to ease the ache in my ribs. We're contradictions. We build and destroy. We love and hate. Sometimes simultaneously. That is not an answer that saves you. It's the only honest one I have. The door chimed softly. The child's posture changed instantly, spine straight, hands folded, the data pad concealed in her robes with a speed that blurred. A guard entered, tall and armored in something that looked like liquid mercury frozen mid-flow. The guard's eyes, if they were eyes, fixed on me, then shifted to the child. A pause. Then, a gesture I couldn't interpret. Mother requests my presence. The child translated, standing. The council has convened. Already? I thought I had a full cycle. You do. But they will debate while you rest. She moved toward the door, then stopped. The guard will remain. Do not attempt to leave or access any systems. It would be interpreted as hostile intent. Wait, what's your name? She hesitated at the threshold. Names have power in my culture. To share mine would be to grant you influence over my judgment. So I'm supposed to convince you without even knowing what to call you. Her expression shifted into something that might have been a smile. If your arguments require the manipulation of personal connection, they are not strong enough. She paused. But my mother calls me Severesh when she is pleased with me. That will suffice. Then, she was gone, and I was alone with the guard. The guard settled into the chair Severesh had occupied, utterly motionless. I couldn't tell if they were male, female, or either. Everything about them suggested function over identity. Their armor made no sound when they moved, no reflection when light hit it. I laid back and tried to think. The data core held everything, military strategies, yes, but also vaccination records, agricultural techniques, climate stabilization attempts. 3 centuries of humanity trying to fix what we'd broken. Did they see that? Or did they only see the wars that necessitated those fixes in the first place? Time passed. I dozed fitfully, jerking awake whenever my subconscious conjured the sensation of vacuum. Each time, the guard remained exactly as before, a statue in liquid metal. When the door opened again, I'd lost all sense of how long had passed. Severesh entered alone, her movements tight with barely contained emotion. She dismissed the guard with a gesture, waited until we were alone, then pulled out the data pad. The Council has reviewed the core data, she said without preamble. Their recommendation is quarantine. Your species will be contained to your solar system for the next 1,000 years. All outbound signals will be jammed. All ships attempting to leave will be disabled. You will either learn to survive within your means or destroy yourselves trying. My chest went hollow. That's a death sentence. Mother disagrees. She says it is a test. If you survive, you earn reconsideration. If you do not, the galaxy is spared your chaos. And you? What do you think? Severesh set the data pad down, screen up. On it, a video played, Grace in her clinic, treating a child with what looked like radiation burns. The audio was off, but I didn't need it. I'd seen this footage in her application portfolio. I think, Severesh said quietly, that your species produces individuals who choose to heal rather than harm. But I am young. The council says my optimism is dangerous. How old are you? Really? 43 of your years. I blinked. You're older than I am. Yes. But among my kind, I am barely past childhood. Mother has lived for 900 years. The youngest council member is 400. They see patterns across time that I cannot yet perceive. Her fingers curled into fists. They see you as a statistical inevitability. A species that will destroy itself regardless of intervention. They want to prevent collateral damage. Show them Grace's work, I said urgently. Show them the vaccine development. The disaster response protocols. They have seen it all. They classify it as crisis management, not evidence of fundamental change. Severesh's eyes met mine. They say your good acts are reactions to your bad ones. That you only heal what you have already broken. Sometimes that's all we can do. Break things and learn from it. Not if you break the same things repeatedly. I had no answer for that. She was right. We did repeat our mistakes, just with bigger weapons and better excuses each time. Severesh stood and moved to the window. The dual suns had set, replaced by a sky full of stars that seemed to pulse with their own light. Mother gave me authority to make a counter-proposal to the council. She said. One chance to suggest an alternative to quarantine. Hope flared. What kind of alternative? Integration. Supervised contact. Cultural exchange. Your scientists learning from ours. Your artists collaborating with ours. Your children. She touched the window, and the glass rippled like water. Your children growing up knowing they are part of something larger than one small world. The council would never agree to that. Not if they think we're dangerous. They would if you proved you could change. Not as a species, that takes too long. But as individuals. If enough of you demonstrated the capacity to grow beyond your origins. She turned back to me. Mother says it is impossible. That environment shapes behavior more than will. That a species forged in scarcity and conflict cannot adapt to abundance and peace. What do you say? I say you are here. Alive. Despite being dead. Despite having every reason to hate us for stealing your secrets. Despite knowing your entire world faces judgment. Her voice intensified. And instead of rage or despair, you speak of your daughter's garden. Of planting trees you will never see grow tall. She crossed back to me, moving with sudden urgency. Tell me I am right. Tell me you are not an anomaly but an example of what your kind can become. The weight of it crushed down on me, not just my life, but Earth's entire future, balanced on whether I could convince one alien child that humanity's best impulses could outweigh our worst. I can't promise we'll never make mistakes again, I said slowly. I can't guarantee we won't fight or fail or fall short of your ideals. But I can tell you that every generation tries to do better than the last. We teach our children to be kinder than we were. We build on what worked and learn from what didn't. It's slow. It's messy. But it's real. Severesh studied me for a long moment. Then she pulled out a second device, smaller, crystalline, pulsing with faint light. This is a memory recorder. I will take your testimony to the council in its purest form, unfiltered by my interpretation. She held it toward me. Speak to them. Make them see what I see. You have until this crystal reaches full illumination. I looked at the device. At Severesh's face, equal parts hope and fear. At the stars beyond the window. And I began to speak, not about humanity's achievements or potential, but about Grace. About the day she'd fallen from the old oak in our yard and broken her arm, and how she'd cried not from pain but from worry that she'd damaged the tree. About her decision to pursue xenobiology not for prestige but because she'd read about the Titan colonies dying from crop failure and thought she could help. About the last message she'd sent me, saying she was proud that I'd volunteered for the supply run because those outposts needed food more than she needed her father home for her birthday. I spoke about my wife, Maria, who died in the water riots of 2089 while trying to evacuate a children's hospital. About how she'd made me promise to never let fear turn into hate, even toward those who'd killed her. I spoke about my grandfather, who'd fought in the resource wars and spent his last decades teaching conflict resolution to kids in the reclaimed zones. About his tattoo, a broken sword planted in soil with flowers growing from the blade, and what he'd said it meant, that the only victory worth having is the one where weapons become obsolete. The crystal pulsed brighter with each word, drinking in not just the sounds but something deeper, emotion, memory, the weight of lived experience. When it finally blazed with sustained light, I fell silent, exhausted. Severesh held the crystal up, examining it with an expression I couldn't read. "This will not sway the older council members," she said quietly. "They have seen too many species offer beautiful words before reverting to violence." "Then why ask me to do it?" "Because there are some who waver. Some who remember when their own species stood where yours stands now." She tucked the crystal away carefully. "And because Mother needs to hear this. She has grown hard from watching civilizations fail. Perhaps your words will remind her that hardness can become brittleness." She moved toward the door, then paused. "The council convenes at next sunrise. Their decision will be final. Whatever happens, know that you gave your species its best chance. Severesh, thank you for believing we're worth the effort." Her hand rested on the door panel. "Do not thank me yet. If I am wrong, if you prove to be the anomaly rather than the example, I will have condemned my own people to future conflict. Mother will never forgive me. The council will never trust my judgment again." She looked back, and her ancient eyes held a very young fear. "I am betting everything on you. Do not make me regret it." Then she was gone, and I was alone with my thoughts and the alien stars. Sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about Grace, about whether she knew I was missing. Had the military declared me dead? Was she mourning, or did some part of her refuse to believe it? Would she understand, if I never came home, that I died trying to save people I'd never met on colony outposts so far from Earth they'd never even seen a blue sky? The guard returned at some point, silent and watchful. I didn't bother trying to communicate. What would I say? "Please tell your superiors that humans are worth saving because my daughter plants gardens and my dead wife believed in peace?" They'd already heard it all, distilled into crystalline memory. The suns rose slowly, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. The guard stood, gestured for me to follow. My body protested, but I managed to rise, the medical equipment disconnecting automatically as I moved. We walked through corridors that seemed to shift and reshape around us, walls flowing like water frozen mid-splash. Other beings passed us, some vaguely humanoid, others so alien I couldn't identify which parts were limbs and which were sensory organs. None spoke. None even looked at me directly. I was a test case. A specimen under observation. The council chamber was vast, circular, with a domed ceiling that showed the cosmos in real time. Planets wheeled overhead. Nebulae pulsed. A binary star system collapsed into mutual destruction in the far corner, its death throes beautiful and terrible. The council members sat in a ring around the chamber's perimeter, 12 beings of different species, each so distinct I couldn't begin to categorize them. At the ring's apex sat the queen, her obsidian skin seeming to drink in the light from the dying stars above. Severesh stood in the chamber's center, alone, the memory crystal held before her like an offering. The guard directed me to a space beside her. As I took my place, I felt the weight of those alien gazes settle on me like physical pressure. The queen spoke, her voice filling not just my mind but the entire chamber. "We have reviewed the testimony. We have debated through the night's cycle. The time has come for decision." A council member to her right, something that looked like a living geometric equation, shifted its angles. "The human speaks movingly of individual virtue. But our records show that human history is defined by collective violence. Compassion is the outlier, not the norm. Another member, this one resembling a cascade of liquid light, pulsed in agreement. Every species that has attempted integration without first achieving internal peace has infected the greater community with their conflicts. We cannot risk repetition. But, a third voice interjected, a being whose form seemed to phase between solid and gas. We have also observed that humans possess unusual adaptability. Their evolution has been rapid. Their cultural changes accelerate. What they are now may not predict what they could become. The debate swirled around me, voices arguing in my skull in languages I didn't speak but somehow understood. Some called for immediate quarantine. Others suggested limited observation. One particularly harsh voice recommended preemptive neutralization, the elimination of humanity before we could spread beyond our solar system. Through it all, the Queen remained silent, her eyes fixed on Severesh. Finally, she raised one hand, and silence fell like a hammer. My daughter has asked to speak in defense of integration. I grant her this right, though I do not support her position. The Queen's mental voice carried layers I couldn't parse: pride, fear, resignation. Severesh, present your argument. Severesh stepped forward, and I saw her hands tremble before she locked them behind her back. Honored Council, she began, her voice smaller than I'd heard it but no less determined. I speak not to dismiss your concerns but to add context. You see patterns across millennia. I see individuals across moments. Both perspectives have value. The Geometric Council members shifted skeptically. This human was dead. We brought him back not for information but because I asked. Because I saw in his suit's emergency storage something none of your data cores can quantify: hope transmitted across generations. She held up the crystal. His daughter studies xenobiology. Not weapons development. Not territorial expansion. She prepares for a future where humans meet other species as partners, not conquerors. Naive preparation is not evidence of capability. The liquid light being pulsed? No. But it is evidence of intention. Severesh's voice strengthened. You ask what humans could become. I show you one human who carries the memory of violence but chooses to plant gardens. Who lost his mate to conflict but teaches peace. Who faces judgment without rage. Sample size of one proves nothing. The geometric member stated flatly. Then, expand the sample. Severesh turned to face the full council. Send observers to Earth. Monitor their progress. Offer conditional contact, aid in exchange for demonstrated cultural evolution. Give them a framework to grow into rather than a cage to die in. And when they fail? The Queen asked quietly. When old patterns resurface. Then we reevaluate. But we do so having given them a chance to prove our pessimism wrong. Severesh's eyes blazed. You have watched 17 species destroy themselves. How many of those did we actually try to help before writing them off? The silence that followed was absolute. The Queen stood slowly, her robes pulling around her like shadow-made substance. You ask us to risk our resources, our time, our very safety on a species that has demonstrated no capacity for sustained peace. I asked you to remember that we were once where they are now. That 700 years ago, our own people stood on the edge of self-destruction. That the Kelvari offered us guidance instead of isolation. Severesh's voice broke slightly. I asked you to honor that gift by passing it forward. A council member I hadn't heard speak before, something that looked like a tree grown from crystal, chimed softly. The daughter speaks truth. We forget too easily what mercy we were shown. Others murmured agreement. The debate reignited, but the tone had shifted. Where before I'd heard only skepticism, now I caught threads of consideration, memory, reluctant hope. The Queen raised her hand again. We will vote. Those favoring immediate quarantine, signal now. 4 lights appeared in the air, the geometric member, the liquid light, and 2 others I hadn't tracked during the debate. Those favoring observation with conditional contact. 5 lights. A narrow majority. and those favoring full integration. Two lights. Severesh's shoulders sagged slightly. The Queen looked at the display of votes hovering in the air. I have not yet cast my judgment. She descended from her seat, moving towards Severesh and me. I am your Queen. My vote carries the weight of 3. I can determine this outcome absolutely. She stopped before us, her impossible eyes moving between her daughter and me. The human's testimony moved me, she said quietly. But testimony is not evidence. Words are not action. I have seen beautiful speeches from species that went on to commit atrocities. She turned to me directly. Tell me, human. If we grant your species conditional contact, what prevents you from using our gifts to wage war more effectively? I met her gaze, though it felt like staring into a black hole. Nothing prevents it. We could take whatever you teach us and weaponize it. That's in our nature. We see every tool as a potential weapon because scarcity taught us that survival requires suspicion. Disappointment flickered across Severesh's features. But, I continued, it's not our only nature. We also take weapons and turn them into tools. Nuclear fission could have ended us. Instead, we used it to power deep space exploration. Gene editing could have created biological weapons. Instead, we eliminated inherited diseases. Every danger we've created, we've eventually learned to control, not perfectly, but progressively. Eventually. After how much suffering? Usually too much. But the trajectory points upward. Each generation suffers less than the last. Makes fewer mistakes. Chooses peace more often. I gestured at the stars wheeling overhead. You're asking for a guarantee I can't give. But I can promise that if you help us, some of us will use that help the right way. And those people will teach others. And slowly, over time, the balance will tip toward the garden instead of the sword. The Queen studied me for what felt like an eternity. Then, she turned to Severesh. You broke protocol to save this human. You risked diplomatic incident to steal their data. You challenged my authority before the entire council. Her voice held no anger, only profound weariness. Why? What do you see that I cannot? Severesh straightened. I see you, Mother. 900 years ago, standing where this human stands now. Facing judgment from the Kalvari Council. Pleading for our species to be given a chance we had not yet earned. The Queen went absolutely still. You told me that story when I was young. How the Kalvari elder voted against his entire council to grant us provisional contact. How he said that wisdom meant knowing when to trust potential over pattern. Severesh's voice softened. You named me after him. Severesh. Hope against reason. You taught me that our entire civilization exists because one being chose to believe in us. The Queen's hands clenched into fists. That was different. How? We were. The Queen stopped, and something cracked in her perfect composure. We were worthy. We were desperate. We were violent. We were dying. Severesh stepped closer to her mother. We were saved not because we deserved it, but because someone believed we could become deserving. I believe the same of humanity. The Queen looked up at the dying binary star system, still collapsing in beautiful destruction. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper in my mind. If I vote for integration and you are wrong, the cost will be catastrophic. If you vote for quarantine and I am right, the cost will be humanity's potential. I can live with theoretical loss. I cannot live with concrete death. Then, you have already decided. Severesh's shoulders fell. I understand, Mother. I am sorry I disappointed you. The Queen turned back to her daughter, and I saw something in her expression that transcended species, the anguish of a parent facing an impossible choice. You did not disappoint me, she said quietly. You terrified me. Because you are right, and I have become too afraid to remember what that feels like. She turned to the assembled council. I cast my vote for integration. Conditional, monitored, revocable if necessary, but integration nonetheless. Her voice filled the chamber. Not because the human convinced me, but because my daughter did. She reminded me that we honor those who saved us not through caution, but through courage. The lights in the air shifted. Integration now held 8 votes to Quarantine's 4. The Queen looked at me one final time. You will return to Earth as our envoy. You will carry our terms for contact. You will serve as the bridge between our peoples. Her eyes narrowed. And if your species proves my daughter's faith misplaced, you will watch your world burn from orbit before we grant you the mercy of death. Do you accept this charge? I thought of Grace. Of her garden. Of the future she'd prepared for without knowing if it would ever come. I accept. Then it is done. The Queen gestured, and the guard moved forward. You will be returned to human space within the next cycle. My daughter will accompany you to facilitate initial contact. We will monitor your progress for the next solar year. At its conclusion, we will re-evaluate. Severesh's head snapped up. Mother, you advocated for integration. You will ensure its success. This is not punishment but responsibility. The Queen's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Teach them, Severesh. As the Kelvari taught us. Show them what they could become. The council chamber began to empty, members departing through doors that appeared and vanished in the flowing walls. Soon, only the Queen, Severesh, and I remained beneath the dying stars. Thank you. I managed. The Queen's laugh was bitter. Do not thank me yet. I have given your species a chance to damn yourselves more thoroughly than Quarantine ever could. When you meet the greater community, you will be judged not just by my people, but by hundreds of others. Some will welcome you. Many will not. You will face tests that make this council's judgment seem kind. We'll do our best. Your best has historically been insufficient. She moved toward the exit, then paused. But perhaps my daughter is right. Perhaps this time will be different. She looked back at Severesh. For all our sakes, I hope she is. Then, she was gone, and the chamber was silent except for the soft sound of stellar collapse overhead. Severesh turned to me, eyes bright with something that might have been tears in a human. We have 1 year to prove this was not a mistake. No pressure. All the pressure. But she smiled, genuinely smiled, and for the first time since I'd woken, I felt something other than dread. Come. We have much to prepare. Your species needs to learn protocols for first contact. Diplomatic procedures. Cultural sensitivities. And you need to learn how to translate my people's concepts into human comprehension. How long will that take? Longer than we have. She gestured, and the guard reappeared, this time carrying what looked like my suit, cleaned and repaired. But we will begin immediately. Your daughter is waiting, after all. We should not keep her garden waiting. I took the suit, feeling its familiar weight. You really think we can do this? Convince the rest of the galaxy that humans are worth accepting? Severesh looked up at the dying stars, at the new ones being born in the nebular clouds beyond. I think the universe is large enough for one more species learning to be better than it was. And I think your daughter's garden deserves to grow beneath alien suns. She held out her hand, a human gesture she must have learned from the Data Core. I took it, her skin cool and smooth and utterly foreign. Thank you, I said again. For believing in us. Thank me when we succeed. Her grip tightened. Until then, we work. We left the chamber together, walking through corridors that reshaped themselves around us. Outside the viewports, I caught glimpses of Earth, blue and beautiful, hanging in the void like a promise. Somewhere down there, Grace was probably in her clinic, healing people. Probably worrying about me. Probably refusing to give up hope despite what the military had told her. I would see her soon. And I would tell her that her garden would grow not just on Earth, but across worlds she couldn't yet imagine. Behind us, the stars wheeled in their ancient dance. Ahead of us, the future waited, uncertain, terrifying, and full of possibility. Severesh had bet everything on humanity's potential. Now it was up to us to prove her faith was not misplaced. The ship that would carry us home materialized in the docking bay, sleek, impossible, beautiful. As we boarded, I looked back one last time at the alien station that had been my grave and my resurrection. The Queen stood at a viewport, watching. Our eyes met across the distance, and I saw in her ancient gaze a challenge and a warning and perhaps the faintest trace of hope. Then the doors sealed, and we were away, hurtling toward Earth at speeds that turned the stars into rivers of light. Severesh sat across from me in the cabin, already pulling up holographic displays of Earth's political structures. "We will land at your species' primary diplomatic facility," she said. "You will introduce me to your leaders. We will establish initial protocols. And then," she looked up, and her smile was fierce and bright, "then, we will show the galaxy what happens when hope refuses to die." I thought of Grace's garden, of my grandfather's broken sword, of Maria's final words about choosing love over fear. "Yeah," I said, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. "Let's show them." The stars streamed past, and for the first time since waking in that alien medical bay, I felt something that had nothing to do with fear or obligation. I felt ready.